district staff will be unable to make public comment about statements, about the ballot measure. And therefore, we have a process and a protocol that has been established by the Board of Education where the president of the board will speak on behalf of the district. Would like to remind all media inquiries will need to be directed to the board president. If I am not available, I will follow a protocol myself where if I cannot respond, I will go to the first vice president. If he is unable to respond, I will go to the second vice president. And if he is unable to respond, I will then choose a board member, whoever's available, on a rotation basis. And I've passed out board bylaws and policy and coherent governance documents to to our board members. And with that, Board Member Kennedy.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with that, President Rodriguez, to make it even more clear that this isn't a board-driven initiative. We have the legal duty and responsibility to put it on the ballot, but this is really going to come from the community, and the real spokespeople will be in the community and from a committee that comes from the community and not this board. So that's where the real spokespeople are going to be.
Thank you for that. Okay. Item 10.2, Elementary and K through 8 Schools Data Report. It is information item, 20-minute presentation, 20-minute discussion.
No. Good evening, members of the board, President Rodriguez and Superintendent Raymond. I'm joined here tonight with a number of folks, Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Olivine Roberts, Stefan Brown, Director of Student Placement and Hearing, and Dr. Bang, who is here from Research and Evaluation, along with Ms. Allen, Assistant Superintendent for the West. Ms. Allen and myself are here to provide an overview of the data for the past 5 years for elementary K-8 schools in the following areas: enrollment, attendance, and suspension, and for the last 4 years in student achievement as measured by the STAR program. In the area of enrollment, elementary and K-8 schools have increased slightly from 25,230 to 26,125 students. The percentage of students living in poverty has increased from 67% to 76%. Students identified in special education has increased from 6% to 11%. The English language learner has actually decreased from 39% to 34% during the same time period. Overall, the Asian, white, African American populations have declined slightly, and the Hispanic and the socioeconomically disadvantaged has increased over this time period. And now we're going to move into standardized tests. The STAR program includes 4 components. As you know, we've got the CSTs, which is the California Standards Test, which assesses student achievement in California for the standards. We also have the CMA, the California Modified Assessment, which allows students with IEPs who are receiving grade level instruction to demonstrate their achievement in the standards. We have the CAPA, which is the California Alternative Placement Assessment, designed for students with significant cognitive disabilities. And the last, the standards-based test in Spanish for those students who have been in the country less than 1 year and their primary language is other than English. Students are expected to meet California standards, and it's measured in performance levels. The expectation for meeting standards is that students achieve advanced or proficient. The data Ms. Allen and I will present will outline those students who have achieved proficient or advanced. I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Allen.
On this first slide, the data is for all elementary and K-8 schools. In 2011, 49% of all elementary K-8 students were proficient or advanced in ELA, 60% proficient or advanced in math, 46% in science, and 45% were proficient or advanced in history, social science. Over the 4-year period, there was a 5-year gain in ELA, 6-year gain in math, a 10% gain in science, and a 12% gain in history, social science. Now we will break down the data by student groups. Over the 4-year period, our African American students made a 3% gain in ELA, a 5% gain in math, an 8% gain in science, and a 16% gain in history, social science. Our American Indian student group made a 5% gain in ELA. Math, however, remained the same at 49%, and this was the only student group to remain the same in math. In science, there was a 14% increase, and the history social science test is taken in the 8th grade, and since there were less than 10 students in this group, no scores were reported. Since 2008, there was a 9% increase in ELA for our Filipino students. This student group made the largest gains in ELA. There was a 7% increase in math. However, in science, there was an 8% decline. And this was the only student group that had a decline in science. Next slide, please. Thank you. For the past 4 years, our Hispanic Latino student group increased by 6% in ELA, increased by 7% in math, made a 13% gain in science, and increased by 12% in history, social science. For our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander student group, there was a 4% increase in ELA over the 4 years, an 11% gain in math, which was the largest student group gain for math, however, remained flat since 2008 in science. Our white student group made a gain of 4% in ELA, remained flat, however, in math, made a 12% gain in science since 2008, and an 8% gain in history, social science. Since the 2 or more races student group did not come into effect until 2010, we only have 2 years of data for this student group. So in 2010, the 2 or more races student group has remained flat in ELA and math and increased by 8% in science and 12% in history, social science. Our Asian student group had a gain of 5% in ELA, a gain of 8% in math, and 11% gain in science, and a 19% gain in history, social science, and this was the largest increase of all student groups.
As you are aware, the Asian student group is further divided into individual student groups. Over the 4-year period, the Asian, Indian, and Chinese increased 6%, Vietnamese increased to 8%, and the other student groups remained relatively flat. In the area of mathematics, the Vietnamese and Laotian increased 6%, the Asian, Indian, and Korean increased 9%, and other Asian groups increased 11%. The science test is administered in 5th and 8th grade. As a result, the student group is relatively small. If a few students move out of the student group, large gains or losses can be reported. Students groups less than 10, as Ms. Allen reported, are not reported, so you won't see a bar. In the area of science, there was an increase with Chinese for 6%, Laotian 20%, Vietnamese 30%, and Japanese showed a decrease of 6%. In the area of history social science, the only student group that had a significant number of students, again above 10, was in the Chinese student group, which remained relatively the same.
Over the 4-year period, socioeconomically disadvantaged students increased by 7% in English language arts, had an increase of 7% in math, 13% in science, and an increase of 17% in history, social science. For our students with disabilities, there was an increase of 8% in ELA, an increase of 9% over the 4 years in math, and an increase of 20% in science, which was the largest increase of the student groups. However, has remained flat in history, social science. Our English learners have increased by 5% in ELA, made a 9% increase in math, a 6% increase in science, and increased by 11% in history, social science. In the next 4 slides, we have our attendance data for our elementary and K-8 schools from 2007-8 to 2011-12. Attendance is monitored on a monthly basis. This report uses month 7, which is a cumulative reported from the beginning of the school year to the state. 37% of our 37% of our elementary and K-8 schools have increased in attendance since 2007-2008 school year. 20 of our schools have declined in attendance since the 2000, and 20 of our schools have declined in attendance. While we have shown gains, we are committed to continue working with our principals on strategies to increase attendance. Next slides, please. Next, we have our suspension data. The total number of suspensions per year between 07-8 and 11-12 school year has declined by 235 for our elementary schools. Prior to the 9-10 school year, K-8 schools were grouped with elementary schools for suspension reporting. As a result, there is only 3 years of K-8 suspension data. The total number of suspensions per year between 2009-10 and 11-12 has decreased by 20 for our K-8 schools. African American and Hispanic students continue to be the largest suspended student groups for our district. We will continue to work with site principals and staff, the academic office, and other departments to decrease suspensions for all students.
In summary, overall there's been a growth in all academic areas for most student groups. However, we recognize the achievement gap still exists. While attendance has improved, we recognize the need to continue to find strategies that improve our attendance. And in the area of suspensions, there's a lot of work to be done as we continue to work with school sites to find alternative strategies for suspending students, while at the same time, research strategies to decrease the number of classroom discipline events that ultimately lead to suspensions. Suspension and attendance next steps. Establish a network of school sites that focus on social emotional learning for the purpose of cultivating a culture that supports the reduction of home suspensions. Continue to work with the attendance office in the area of the early warning system to address chronic truancy. And to continue to develop intervention programs to identify and target students at risk of failure. In the area of academics, we know that students who are engaged in the teaching and learning process have less discipline issues. With this in mind, the following strategies focus on further developing the teaching and learning environments in our classrooms and our schools. We'd like to continue the data inquiry work for the purpose of informing instruction, interventions, and programmatic changes. Establish site networks to support collaboration with principals designed to enhance the teaching and learning environments. Continue to prep professional development for elementary and K-8 school teachers in Common Core. Continue the work of inclusive practices to ensure continued improvement of academic outcomes for students with disabilities. Continue to implement culturally responsive teaching practices and differentiated instruction to address the diverse needs of the students. And to continue to support school sites that are implementing balanced literacy to increase the performance of all students in English language arts. As mentioned earlier, students who are engaged in the learning process
As
are
they read,
less
they think.
likely.
There's a whole
You know, we're
lot
just
of
gonna go with
kind
this
of
video right
thinking
now
that
'cause
good
it's a-
leaders do.
it won't
A lot
stop,
of
so
kind
we're
of
just gonna
thinking. Today, we're going to focus on one kind of thinking. Show me that you're ready.
Did it stop? Okay, no.
Here it comes. Ready? Okay, here it is. One of many things that we do when we read is we use, and here's some big words, tier 2 I'm sure, here we go. We use relevant. That means it's got to work for us. It's relevant. It's not ridiculous, it's relevant. We use relevant prior knowledge, background knowledge, things that we already know. And the reason we do that is we want to connect with the book. We want to become really a good reader understanding this book so we can understand it, yes? So that's the one thing we're going to focus on today. Will you read this with me, please? Okay, here we go. Relevant prior knowledge to connect with the text so we can understand. What your job today is this. I'm going to, it's kind of like taking off the top of my head. You're going to hear what I'm thinking as I read. I'm going to think this way. I'm going to try to use my relevant prior knowledge best I can to connect. You're going to hear me take off the top of my head, you're going to hear my thinking, and then you're going to get a chance to try. All right? Okay, here we go. So listen, I'm going to model for you what it is to use prior knowledge to connect with the text so I can understand it. Because that's what good readers do. Whump, whump, whump. The ball bounces as my big brother Nate and I walk into the park. At the court, everybody shakes hands. And the guys split into 2 teams of 4, shirts and skins. Shirts and skins. Yeah, I do have background knowledge about that. And I think it's relevant to the book. My son, I remember, was trying out for a soccer team. And the coach said, okay, we're going to split into shirts and skins. Shirts and skins. And then I saw some boys had shirts on, and some boys took their shirts off because they didn't have any uniforms. Then they could tell who was on what team. Oh, shirts and skins. Okay, I'm good. I'm feeling better. I wish I was big enough to play, but because I'm only 10, I go to the side court. No other kids are here, so I practice my game. I dribble, 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 dribble. Dribble like babies dribble? No, that doesn't make any sense. Because this is a thing about basketball. Oh, wait a minute. I think I've seen that. Dribble. Oh, yeah. I can remember an announcer saying, as my husband's watching the basketball game in the other room, and he's dribbling down the court. Okay, I got it. I can see that now. Dribble down the court. Okay, I got it. Dribble, and I aim for the hoop. Shoot, get the ball, shoot, over and over. Back on the main court, Zoe glides down the lane, takes a pass, then flips a finger roll with his left hand. So smooth, it looks like slow motion. Now I imagine I'm playing as an all-star. Tie game, 9 seconds left. Tie game, 9 seconds left. Yeah, I get that. Okay, so I'm taking off the top of my head, I'm letting you hear my thinking, because you're going to have a turn in just a minute. I get that. And not with basketball, but I've seen it like in hockey, where they're tied up, and the announcer's going, 9 seconds left. Boy, that's really a tight amount of time, but I know a lot can happen in 9 seconds. It's helping me understand. I'm connecting to the book. Hey, I'm doing okay. I bounce the ball with my left hand. No one's open. 6, 5, 4. I drive left, spin right, and soar to the hoop. The buzzer sounds. Oh, he's imagining this. Yeah, he's pretending in his head. Yeah. Oh no, Luke yells. He lies under the basket, grabbing his ankle. I'm done. You need to get another player. How about James? Slinky points to me. You want to run? Yeah! I race onto the court. Nate and the guys gather around me. He's not big enough, says Marcus. Someone else will show. We're not waiting. Zoe picks up the ball. Come on, James, you're a skin. Skin, I got that. I peel off my shirt and think how skin skinny my body looks. You guard Marcus, says Nate. Stick to him. Stick to him. Stick to him. Yeah, I've seen basketball players really close like this. Stick to him right away. Okay, so readers, I've just shown you how as we read, good readers really think, right? They're using everything they know that makes sense, that's relevant for the text, that makes sense to help them make sense of the text and really understand it. So it's your turn on this page. You're going to try. And I don't know where you're going to make a connection. I don't know. But I'm going to read it. And when you have a connection on this page, will you please do this? Okay? When you make a connection on this page, do this. And you'll have a chance to talk. Ready? All right. Get ready with your thumb to do this when you have a connection. Here we go. I look up at Marcus, who's a head taller. His muscles push out his shirt. Maybe I'm not ready to be out here. 3-3, game's 15. Right away, the ball goes to Marcus. I slip and fall to the asphalt as he goes to the hoop. Out of nowhere, Slinky leaps to block the shot. Get that out of here. Do we have some connections on this page? Okay. If you've got one, put it on. There you go. Turn and tell your partner, what's your connection? What prior knowledge are you using to make sense?
The purpose of that video was to show an example of balanced literacy, one of the many strategies that we're using to, one, increase engagement, which is certainly going to support our suspension and discipline, and also support the academic achievement of students. And with that, we are here for questions.
Thank you. We're going to take public comment first before we go to board member questions.
We have one public comment from Darlene Anderson.
Good evening. It's such a tiny bit of data for a small number of students. But when I look at Sacramento City Unified School District, I understand the history of the district. The district has created very successful programs in failing schools in order to ensure that those schools make progress and don't slip too far into program improvement. But when you look at a Title I school like Edward Kimball and Cesar Chavez, that has a language immersion program inside the school. And that immersion program pulls up the test scores for all the rest of the children. So that school remains somewhat successful. But for the rest of the kids who are not receiving the same services, they're not doing as well. But the district operates programs like this all over the district. And all over the district, we have schools within schools. And that doesn't help children who actually live in the poverty areas. The district funds its Title I schools by the number of children who live in the area, not by the number of children who attend that school. So I'm looking at children who live in that area and wondering why we would choose to close Freeport Elementary School when that school had 300 or less kids, right down the street. Edward Kimball and Cesar Chavez have more than 900 students on a less than a city block. And I know that this has been going on for years. But yet and still, when I come to this board or I contact the district to try to share my concerns, I am willfully overlooked. But not anymore. I'm asking that the community step up and figure out a way to sue this district, since it perhaps is the only way that African Americans will have some semblance of support. I went to a meeting with Phil Cerna, and African Americans are the highest death rate in the Sacramento County of all segments. And so the children are dying from 0 to 17 in the highest rates in the California. And I don't know what else to do, because it's just really difficult to come here and ask that we have some semblance of equity and ensure that the dollars are being spent by the number of students who are generating the funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent, can we get technical out here to fix our clock too? buzz when it's, thank you. We have board member questions. Vice President Cuneo.
So I appreciate the presentation and the information. Glad that we're doing it, obviously. So I just want to hear from you all and your thoughts and how we're doing. So if you're looking at what I'm looking, and just kind of want to hear your opinions.
Since I'm standing up, I think I'll be the one to give the opinion. I see overall over the 5-year period, let me talk to the achievement gate data first. Overall, it seems like we're growing in all subject areas in the majority of the student groups. Could we be growing more? Certainly, we could be growing more in all areas as we continue to look for strategies and supports for our students. But overall, in the last 5 years, last 4 years, there has been growth in all areas. So to me, that's a good sign. In the area of suspension, certainly there's a lot of work to be done in the area of the disparity between the student groups. However, there is some growth being made there with the reduction of the suspensions. And lastly, the attendance. There's some good news with the attendance also. Attendance, certainly, we need kids in school in order to do the work that we do as far as their achievement. So there's growth in that area also. Can there be more growth? Certainly there could be more growth, and that's what we continue to work on.
So do you have any opinions on what attributes to that growth? Any
What do I believe
strategies or
what do I believe
programs?
attributes to the growth?
Yes,
In
in
the-
academic.
In the area of academics, I'm going to ask Dr. Roberts to speak to this. She's been in the district a little longer than myself. I certainly could speak to the different strategies on that last slide, but she can certainly add a little bit more information for you.
Thank you. I'll speak to the last couple of years.
Okay.
I can't speak to the 4 years, but I think it's the continued focus on professional learning. We believe that as our teachers, learners, and our principals learn, so do our students. It's also the continued focus on presenting to our students a very comprehensive and robust curriculum that is not necessarily dependent upon a single textbook. But we're moving and using the textbook as a resource and really providing students with a rigorous and relevant curriculum, i.e. the work that we're doing with our balanced literacy and the transition to our Common Core implementation.
Fair enough. So, I mean, obviously, when I look at the data over some period of time, and I don't think we're unique here, but you do see some sort of, kind of pernicious underperformance in certain geographical areas. And we talked about this a little bit when you made a comment in regard to specific strategies designed for African American youth and so forth. Your opinions on that comment? Do you see that there are certain areas of our district that are not growing or performing as we would want our kids to in the classroom? And if so, how do you feel about that? And what do you
So
think
when
we
we
should
take
do?
a look at the overall performance of our students, I believe the average was in the 40s. So as a district, we have majority of our students not at the level that we desire. And then, yes, as we further disaggregate and we look at subgroups, we see that there are some subgroups that have a greater disparity than others. And that does give us a reason to pause and to really examine what we need to do differently. So how do we continue or raise the level of implementation regarding culturally responsive pedagogy in our classroom to ensure that more teachers are, and not just teachers, but principals are adhering to those strategies and are implementing them daily. Also, the continued use of differentiation of instruction. So we're really looking at how our students learn and providing the quality instruction that would address those needs. We need to continue. We're not at a place where we're satisfied. We're not satisfied at all. But we believe that we have made incremental steps. There's some small successes, but there is ample work to be done.
And so in regard to the implementation piece, where are we on those two strategies, the cultural?
I didn't bring that data with me. I will say
an
this, I don't
overview,
have we'll be able to provide the written numbers to you after the conclusion of this board meeting. But in the last 2 years, we've had more teachers to engage in differentiation of instruction, professional development, as well as culturally responsive teaching and learning. Not all of our teachers have gone through the professional learning, but more teachers from year to year,
And so you think that's a good thing, obviously.
of course,
Okay.
yes.
And so how do we ensure that we do get more teachers involved in this
We
program?
continue to have teachers to visit each other. So this past school year, quite a few teachers actually visited to see what was going on in the classroom, to see the level of engagement of students. I think that really provokes others to wanting to know, well, maybe I need to try this. The continued work with our leadership, with our principals, as to raising the level of urgency that we do need to increase the number of teachers engaged in this type of professional learning opportunities, and just continue to press, to push.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. So, just from I was wondering when I look at the data, there's, you can go school by school and see that I would agree the majority of our schools are climbing upwards. There are some schools that are fairly stagnant. There's 4 schools that I noted went down in ELA, math, and science. So I was wondering, is that something that you, how important is that to you? I mean, if you see a school, if you see data, is that something that's important? How important? And then I can follow up.
Any decline is not good, so I would say it's very important that we really dissect to find out what caused the decline, to triangulate with other pieces of data, looking at the benchmark reports, looking at actually what's going on in the classroom, examining student work, examining instruction, and triangulating all those pieces of data for us to really identify exactly what the root cause is for the decline, and then to take strategic moves to ensure that the decline does not continue.
And so the moves, would you endorse moves as kind of sweeping as getting rid of school leadership?
If the decline continues, and if we realize that the leadership is a critical factor in that decline, then yes, in the best interest of our students.
Okay. So I think, I won't go into, we talked, I think, in the high school section about institutional impediments and of those sorts, and we had a nice discussion about that. What's your thoughts on school site leadership tied to student learning? I mean, how important is it to you?
I'll give you the research, then I'll give you my opinion, okay? Because I like to base my answers based on what the research says. The research says that the leadership is critical. The leadership is actually the barometer of a school. The leadership is, when it comes to student achievement, is second to the classroom teacher. The classroom teacher is the most critical. And the leadership sets the tone, the culture, as to how we get teachers to engage. And that's the research, and my opinion follows the research.
So I guess from where I'm sitting, because from this perspective, I don't see the institutional impediments to bold decision-making at the leadership level as I do to making other decisions at other levels of the school system. And
So I'm going to call on my colleagues who work primarily with the leaders to.
I was just going to make a comment. I would, if I look at the data and you surmise that it's not going in the direction that you want and students aren't learning to the capacity that you feel is they can at each school, I'm in favor of bold change and swift change to get kids in a position to learn and make sure that the adults are focused on that task. So that was all I wanted to say on that.
Thank you.
In regard to the suspension data, I just had a couple quick. So I just wanted, what's your sense of where we're at?
I think you asked the question, what's my sense of where we're at?
Correct.
I think the data shows that there is a positive trend in the district as it relates to suspensions for elementary students. I think this summer and in previous years and previous summers, we always sort of plan for the upcoming year. There is a focus this summer in our office and with administrators, with the Family Services Office, to spread sort of a philosophy that's developing within the district to the schools and to the principals as it relates to how we can continue to decrease the number of suspensions, especially for Black and Hispanic youth, and if you wanted to break it down more, Black and Hispanic males in particular.
And how is that being done? How are we going about it?
I think one of the strategies that we will propose to principals, and some may hear it and may not have heard it yet, but as it relates to Ed Code 48900K, the data suggests that 48900K will account for, depending on the district, maybe 50% of all suspensions. I think there are some things that we can do when it comes to those defiance-related issues. And it'll take some training and take some, some finesse on our part to get it done, but there are some things we can do to the most frequent suspension, which is 48900K, to even decrease our suspensions more. I think the data shows that in this district, as it relates to, I know we're not on expulsions, but we are the envy of many when it comes to expulsions. We take great pride in the fact that we expel when we have to. When we don't, when we don't have to, we find alternatives. And there's nothing to say that we couldn't become area and state leaders as it relates to suspensions as well.
And so, just so I'm clear, so the training or the discussion with principals, that's going to be occurring or has started, or?
One of the things we do every year before the start of school is we have all vice principals into our office, especially at the middle and high schools, because they tend to be the ones that handle discipline. And we spend several hours with them, both on instruction of how to deal with our office as it relates to suspension and expulsions, and any strategies or programs that we feel could help them in on their campuses.
Okay. From my perspective, I'd really like to see the suspensions go down, especially at the K through 6 level. I mean, I think those kids got to do something Big 5 or equivalent to get suspended and expelled. I think we see it in the data. We've got 40% of our suspensions are African American. We know they're only about 18% of our district. And so I'm concerned that obviously impacts the academic piece because they're taken out of the classroom, they're not learning. And also just this, I don't know if we have a sense of even kind of principal referrals, the number of principal referrals that are being made where kids are taken out of their classroom and losing valuable time. So, at this level, I would just really urge us to have hard discussions with our principals about the need to find different ways to deal with what I guess would be incorrigible behavior.
And I think we do have those conversations. Sometimes victory is slow.
I agree.
And
it's actually not a criticism. I get the place we're coming from, and I like what you're saying, and I like the direction you're giving. And I have faith that we will implement the direction that you want, that you're telling me. And so I'm actually encouraging you. I'm giving you as much support as I can, especially at this level, at this elementary school level. I think it's just vital. So I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Vice President Cunha. I have Member Terry next.
Thank you. And I just want to kind of make one comment on your comments, and that I too believe in bold leadership changes when it's needed. And having been here when my first 7 months or so before Superintendent Raymond got here, and immediately following that, and during the fall of that first year with him here, I can attest that we have had bold leadership changes when we need them, and I've felt much better as a school board member since having him here on that front. That when we've needed changes, they've happened. I've asked for this before, and I know that it's not broken out here, but I'd really like to see a comparison of our 7th and 8th grade students that are at K-8s comparatively to our students that are at middle schools. And I've asked that a couple different times. And with these exact comparisons and how those 7th and 8th grade students stack up against our middle school students, the demographic changes, the demographic differences, and then all of this type of data, because I think a larger discussion needs to happen in this district, and I've been advocating for this since I've been on the board, that I really think we need to do some soul searching about what the successful model is, what we're good at and what we're not, figure it out and start doing what we're good at and stop doing what we're not. And I appreciate and have been a strong advocate for priority schools, but when we look at 3 out of our 7 priority schools, our middle schools, that tells us something that we're obviously struggling to provide services for. And again, I'm not an educator, but I'm going to quote a very smart man that sat next to me, and I got to drive home quite often from school board meetings, and that's Dr. Hausman, and he reminded me that a lot of studies that he read said that minority students and lower income students performed better in K-8 schools than they did in middle schools, and that affluent Caucasian students perform better in middle schools. And if I look at most of our K-8s, they tend to serve the opposite populations. And I'll just be blunt in saying it, that I think that one of the reasons that we've ended up with K-8s in certain neighborhoods is to prevent affluent students from going to middle schools with lower income students. That neighborhoods have wanted to keep their kids in their neighborhood and not going over to other schools. And it's at the detriment of our middle schools. And I think we need to have a serious discussion in this district about what we're doing when it comes to 7th and 8th graders. Something is still struggling, and when we look at our 9th grade test scores and dropouts and everything else, it's happening in 7th and 8th grade. That's my opinion. So I'd really like to see that kind of data. I appreciate all of this. The middle school's presentation, the high school presentation, this is the kind of stuff we should be talking about and that we should be dealing with in our school board meetings. But I'd really like to see those comparisons so we really can understand what kind of education a 7th grader is getting that stays at Da Vinci comparatively to one that goes to Cal Middle or vice versa.
Superintendent Raymond?
Thanks, President Rodriguez. There's just a couple of things I want to make some comments on particularly as it regards to the suspension conversation. This is an area where I'm really not satisfied, and I've talked to staff about this. And I think we have a great opportunity with this the social emotional grant that we've received in support from the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, and the 6 other districts we'll be working with around the country to examine this. The challenge, there's a culture of suspension that exists in public education, and that culture has to be changed. And in order to change that culture, we have to give the adults in the system, not only new expectations, but new tools and strategies. And just this week we sent a team up to spend time with Oakland Unified, and we're partnered with Oakland on a lot of things, but particularly through the social emotional learning. But they're a little bit ahead of us, I'd say by a matter of some months, around looking at this suspension issue. And I can tell you this year, this fall, in our district, within a school or two, we're gonna drastically curtail suspension. For, as I think Vice President Cuneo said, other than some of those big 5 offenses, kids aren't going to be suspended. They're going to be staying in the classroom. and zero suspension for things like defiance or speaking out. And this is the area that we're going to move into, and it's going to be a bold change. But we have a number of schools that are interested in moving in this direction, and we're going to move there, and I'm going to push this district in that direction because it's the right thing to do for kids. I'm going to talk a little bit about the comments, and Member Terry isn't here, around the whole middle school piece, and I would agree that this idea of middle schools and K-8s, but I think that our district has a great opportunity now to really to redefine culture in middle schools, and I would agree that the characterization that he said a little bit earlier around traditionally why were K-8s established, and where have middle schools succeeded in this district. But well, I think we're actually rewriting that. And when you go to particularly these priority schools, and I would say even California Middle School, it isn't a priority school, but it is an incredible school. Now, middle schools are very different places. And I think for some young people, that middle school environment is a good environment for them. It's a different feel. It's a different environment. And I think for some children, a K-8 environment is a better environment. And it's important that our district have that choice, but it's important that the schools, no matter what the structure is, that they're schools of excellence. And we haven't had that really largely with our middle schools in this district, but that's changing. And again, I continue to urge you, go to California Middle School, walk that school during the school day. Go to Fern Bacon and Rosa Parks, and you'll see dramatically different places. And there's a number of things that I think, but it gets down to what was said earlier, excellent leadership. Excellent leadership. When you go to these schools, you'll see that. Committed teachers and adults doing what's right for kids in these schools. And some other things that are occurring, and I urge you quickly to get out to our school sites to see our summer of service programs. I think we're doing something here that is going to send ripples throughout this country, in terms of what's happening. We have young people coming to their new campuses, where they've never been. Think about going to middle school, coming out of 6th grade, or going to high school, walking into McClatchy or Burbank as a 9th grader, never been there. Maybe you went once. Think of how intimidating those schools are. And now think of all the young, all the different faces you're going to meet. But imagine you've just spent 5 weeks on that campus, and you've made friends, incoming 9th graders or incoming 7th graders, and you've been mentored by 8th graders or mentored by 12th graders. And think how powerful that is. You've come on, you're comfortable, you have a sense of belonging. And then most importantly, and we have over 1,000 kids working on this right now. You're working on a project that has an impact at that school site or within the community. Gang awareness, suicide prevention, looking at addressing and feeding the homeless. These are just a few of the projects that they're working on that they figured out. They've been empowered. They made the decisions to work on these projects, and they're doing something meaningful. And it's really powerful. So they hit the ground running. You feel the energy. I talked about it this evening. For those of you who have kids, maybe you've seen the movie Monsters, Inc., right? Where they get people to scream and it generates energy. But, they figured out that laughter is a whole lot more energy. Well, if you go to these schools today, and I'm saying, we only got a few more days, folks, go. Because the showcase is next Thursday at McClatchy High School. If you could plug a generator into these schools and tap that energy that these young people are producing, it is so unbelievably contagious. Where around this country and just around the state, people are turning off their buildings, they're turning them down, they're cutting the energy, the lights, and the learning off to save resources. While our most valuable resources, right, our children, the future, we've done something different here. It's dramatic. And at our middle schools, where we have them, at our high schools, where we have it, go. Don't take my word for it. Just go and see what they're doing. And I think we're going to change the paradigm around that middle school dynamic and the paradigm around our high school dynamic so that, people better take notice because we're doing it here in Sacramento. So long answer to some of the questions that were answered up here, but I'm really excited about the future for learning in this community.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any more board member comments, questions, concerns? Okay, I'm going to ask a couple of questions, but first, before I do so, I want to thank you, Superintendent, for your passion and dedication. Your response just now really illustrates that. Excuse me. And Ms. Roberts, I think you gave an excellent response and a difficult question. Hats off to you. Thank you very much. Good answer. And also, although I'm not sure if you guys were aware of it, but that video contained my daughter in there. And I want to give you a public testimony as from the parent perspective. The reason why I chose that school is because my child was behind in reading. And that video clearly illustrates why she was able to jump in her reading levels and in such a rapid manner. And before she went to Harkness Elementary, and I see the former principal, Eric Chapman, there, I'd like to acknowledge his presence here today. Before she went there, she didn't have a love for reading. She now, even in her summer quest, she's in the summer quest program, she takes books to school with her every day. And she sets a good example for her sister. And as a parent, that makes me feel fantastic. It's the best thing, it's the best gift you could ever give to a child, is the love for reading, because reading is the foundation for their entire educational career. And we know that education is a continuous process, and it's a life learning process for everyone. So I have nothing but positive remarks to say about the programs that have been implemented. And just for the information, Harkness Elementary is a Title I school, and they do not discriminate. They do have these wonderful programs that exist at these schools. And I know it seems hard at times when we start looking at data and statistics of what's going on, especially with our African American community and the death rate that Ms. Anderson brought forward. But rest assured that we are trying to do our best over here. We are trying to implement models and programs that are going to help address. But at the same time, we need partnership from those children's parents, guardians, legal guardians, whoever is in charge and taking care of them. We need that partnership because children solely on their own cannot achieve. They need an adult in their life to be their champion with them along their side and encourage them along the way. So let's not blame an entire school system. Let's look at coming together and working together to address the issues that we see that are chronic within our community. With that, I have my questions of attendance. We didn't touch on attendance, and it was very concerning to me to see that we had 20 schools that decreased in their attendance. And as I just said, we have programs here, and when children don't attend, it's very difficult to catch them up. They miss a day of learning. So can we address what we are doing about those 20 schools and how we can increase the attendance there?
We do anticipate some changes being made to how we address attendance in the district. Specifically, I'm not in a position to address the specific 20 schools. I didn't. We expected someone else to be here to do that tonight. But next meeting, I'd be happy to return to respond to your question.
Thank you.
I can add a little bit, President Rodriguez.
Yeah.
We did a pilot project this year to look at chronic truancy in 4 to 5 of our elementary schools. That's as a part of a partnership with the Department of Education here in California. So we're getting some of that data, trying to really study it. I don't know that we completely understand all of the reasons. I mean, if you look at some of the data here, you'll see that in particularly in some more high poverty areas, the attendance rates are down. Yet you look at a few of our schools, Harkness being one, Earl Warren being another one, where you see much higher rates of attendance, despite that they're both 100% poverty schools. Maybe no coincidence, both of them are very strong proponents and participants in the parent-teacher home visit program. So these are some of the things that I think we need some more data on. We did put in place the last 2 years a specific position that's been working on attendance, and Ms. Kathy Whiteside has been in that role. We do a lot of work now trying to look at the attendance processes that we can utilize. But I think we're still continuing it to study it. We're looking at a tool that we piloted at a high school and a middle school to look at some of the interventions that are being used. So we're gathering that data, and this long-term truancy project is giving us some more information so we can, I think, make some informed decisions. We know if kids are excited to come to school, if the learning is relevant. Kids like to go to school, and at some of these schools that we talked about earlier tonight, we see higher rates of attendance versus others. So I don't know that we have the complete picture, but I can assure you that as a team we're looking at it, and we'll come back and continue to talk about the strategies that can be put in place. It isn't just one strategy, right? So it's, as you said earlier, engaging parents to be part of the solution. We know that's a big piece of it. Children, even at the elementary level, need to start to take some ownership and control of their own learning. You saw that in the video tonight. Balanced literacy, truly engages children in their own learning, and so we're moving to 5 more schools that will be doing that kind of work, and some of them have been schools that have been frankly struggling. So it's a multiple of strategies that we have to continue to work on. We'll continue to come back and share the strategies that we believe are working, as well as the areas that we're struggling in.
I'd like to say, too, as area assistant superintendents, part of what we do when we go out to schools and speak with our principals is to talk about attendance, look at the data, and discuss strategies on how we can assist our schools in increasing attendance as well. So we're very much involved in attendance and understand the importance of where we are as a district.
As an area superintendent, so I'm assuming that you have a checklist of items that you go out to monitor schools for.
We do, and it's based on data, based on what's happening at the schools, but there are certain items that we speak with our principals when we go out and meet with them.
And when you're talking to them, you're sharing strategies, or are you?
We share strategies, we look at research, we talk about individual students. I sometimes speak with parents, speak with students. I've had meetings with students regarding attendance. So yes, we're right there in the front line.
Oh, you hit right on when I was just asking. Thank you.
I wanted to respond to Member Terry's request earlier. I do have that data for the comparison of the middle school and the K-8s. So I will draft that and get it out to you, okay? So you will have that available.
Awesome. Thank you. On the issue of the culturally responsive teaching and learning, we had a presentation by the Black Parallel School Board, and I believe it was during his presentation, Mr. Darrell White explained that culturally responsive teaching was developed to implement with African American children. Or should I stand corrected? Is that correct?
It was developed for primarily children of color, African American as well as Hispanic primarily.
And how many schools are we doing the CRT in?
I will need to get you that number. We have it in quite a few of our elementary schools and some of our middle. Do you have an idea? But we can get that number to you.
Yeah, it would be appreciated.
Will
And
do.
then is the program fully implemented, or are there only portions of the program implemented at these schools that CRT is happening?
It's a set of pedagogical strategies, so we have varying levels of implementation in our schools. So that's why the continued need for the professional learning.
I appreciate the focus on the continuous development of staff. I had one more question. It was about behavior in classrooms or on the school campus. I know many times I walk onto my children's campus and I see there's certain students that they're not shy. They don't shy away from adults. They don't shy away from anything. And you know, as I had a wonderful opportunity this summer to connect more with my children's after school and now summer program coordinator. And we had been talking about one particular student that just had no, she was not shy whatsoever to come up to me and ask me questions and, interact with me. And that sometimes it was a little inappropriate. Those are the types of challenges that school sites face because there's a home environment that exists and they carry the home environment into the school environment. And so it made me think, though, about these students. This one student made me think about all the students in Sac City Unified. And I know that when I used to attend Luther Burbank, I was in the peer counseling classes. But do we have those classes at the young elementary school level, at the middle school level? And are we developing site leaders so that they can model behavior for other students, talk to other students that are in crisis, or talk to other students that may not understand or socializing skills that are appropriate when speaking to adults or children, other children, staff?
I think we do. We do have programs that reflect the sensitivities that you just expressed on many of our campuses. One of the words that I anticipate the superintendent mentioned staff's recent trip to Oakland. There was a rather robust conversation about the whole concept of restorative discipline or restorative justice. In traditional discipline, you might ask the question, what rule did you violate? What did you do? Why did you do that? The concept of restorative justice or restorative discipline deals with who did you harm? How can you make it right? And I think those types of conversations, even with the littlest of those, if you will, could have an impact, a subtle impact, but nonetheless an impact on how we as a district respond to discipline, and hopefully that will reflect in our numbers. But the concept of restorative discipline or restorative justice, as it's referred to in the literature, I think will be something that this isn't the first time that we'll discuss it. And it sort of deals with the question of having those ongoing conversations about that sort of aberrant behavior that you just discussed. It's very tough when you're on a campus. I mean, the average bystander can sort of walk by a situation on a campus. Maybe you're taking a tour and you see a student do something, you say, "Whoa, that's where'd that come from?" And you might say, the question might come, what's going to happen to the student? But the principal or the teachers or other staff has to think, what can we do to improve the student's behavior without every response that we make being punitive? And I think that gets to the heart of what Superintendent Raymond discussed earlier about sort of changing the culture of discipline, of suspension.
I look forward to seeing that, I look forward to seeing the restorative justice and discipline put in place. It sounds like a model that teaches personal behavior, responsibility for one's personal behavior, rather than take the deficit approach. Yeah, it was wrong. So it sounds very positive.
President Rodriguez, I also wanted to just add that that's a component of our social emotional learning work that we're moving forward with. Again, a lot of our work will be developed around those social emotional competency skill set that you referenced to. So it's not only focusing on student behaviors, but again, adult behaviors and creating that culture and environment for learning. And so within our departments, our youth development department, our integrated service support, and working with our academic office, we'll be able to develop some professional learning opportunities around that. Earlier, we mentioned in networks of schools that will be focusing on social emotional learning. We definitely would like to be able to look at that networks of school and learn from what they're actually implementing next year and incorporate that into some of our professional learning opportunities.
Thank you. I have no further questions. We have the superintendent light.
Thanks, President Rodriguez. I just wanted to add one more piece that specifically around the peer mentoring. We've started a program this year. We started in January, our Men's Leadership Academy. We have it going. It's gone the longest at American Legion. It's really for looking at those young males that are not only are they at risk based upon suspension data, attendance data, and their academic performance, but they also exhibit leadership potential. And it's an opportunity for them to come together during the class day. It's actually an elective, ideally. And they are learning from a real committed adult, a teacher. They're learning leadership skills, life skills, and an opportunity for them to come together and really begin to define and to change the culture on their campuses, and not only on their campuses, but within their neighborhoods and communities. And so the program started at American Legion. Once a week, they have a role model from the community that comes in and talks to these young men. I wish Member Kennedy was here because he's had a chance to go and actually see the program. We started the program then shortly thereafter at McClatchy High School. So they got up and going this year, and we've started it's right now as an after-school program at Kennedy High School. But the goal is that it will be at all of our high schools and all of our feeding middle schools, an opportunity for these young men to come together and start to become leaders on their campuses and change the culture. We're excited about, I know they didn't mention, but our Summer of Service program, so we have over 1,000 young people participating. In just a few weeks' time, 500 of those young people will be selected again by the adults and the peers in that program, and 500 of them will go to spend 3 days, 2 nights over at Sacramento State College, where they will again come together as a group of young people interested in becoming leaders within their schools and in their communities, and they'll be given further exposure and training to team building, leadership building. They will go then back to their campuses. Again, adults will be joining them to again create this culture of not only empowered students, but students that are taking positive leadership roles on their campuses. From those 500, 100 will then be selected to actually go on to do some further leadership development at the Sierra Health Foundation's Grizzly Camp up in the Sierras. Remember, that was a camp that I attended last summer. And 100 of these young people will get additional training in team building and leadership to, again, go back to their campuses as really empowered 7th and 8th graders, 9th and 10th graders to really begin to define that culture and to play that peer role that I think is so wanting and so needed on our campuses. So we look forward to coming back to you in the fall and giving you an update on this and telling you how our programs are progressing and what are some of the successes and challenges that we're facing.
Thank you for that update. And thank you for the reminder. I did want to say something about the Summer of Service program. I did show up to one of their showcases, I want to say last year or the year before that, and it was phenomenal. So if the board members have not been to a Summer of Service program showcase at a minimum, take the opportunity on Thursday to please show up next Thursday. And you'll see what the program is all about, because that's kind of where it all comes together and shows the finality of the program. And then talking about the selection of the student leaders, I tend to believe that sometimes you have to take some strong personalities, even though they're not selected by their peers, but they have that strong personality that they could benefit from being a peer mentor, and put them into a peer mentorship program so that they understand how to use that strong personality to the benefit of themselves and society, and then become leaders that way. So I want to open that consideration up, and because that sometimes makes all the difference in that child's life for success, as opposed to using that strong personality and the energy and the strong will that they have to go the other direction. So, thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you, staff and faculty, for showing up. And a very big thank you to Vice President Cunha, who spearheaded this idea and bringing it forward. And I appreciate that we are changing conversation here, and it's because of your leadership, Vice President Cunha. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 10.3, AB 1200, disclosure of cost of the agreement with Service Employees International